guys, welcome yet again to yet another home range poultry video. Now on today's video, I want to discuss the aspect of eggs. What type of eggs do you use for incubation and for hatching into chicks? Now, the type of eggs that we use are eggs which we call fertilized eggs. Now, I can't be able to get on today's video into aspect to do with the fertilized eggs. How do you make sure you're fertilized? That's a video for another day. But for today's video, the eggs that you see before you are basically fertilized eggs, and what I'm planning to do with them is select them, because we don't actually use up all the eggs. You must select them to make sure that you choose the right quality, the right type of eggs for you to load onto these setter trays that you see here, and that eventually will go into these machines which are basically our setters and our hatchers. So it's these hatchers and setters that you see here that actually these fertilized eggs will be produced into chicks. And of course, if you watch the previous videos, you will see how that takes place in the setter and in the hatcher. So please check out our other YouTube videos, and you should be able to understand all those aspects. Now for today's video, I want to take you through selection of these eggs, and what you see here are fertilized eggs, as I've mentioned, and what you actually see here, this is called a setter tray. Now, the work of the setter tray is for it to hold eggs in such a way, as you can see, it has some notches here and there, which ensure that the egg is held in place when the egg is actually, when the setter is actually doing what we call the egg turning, which is basically to keep switching the eggs and turning them at an angle of 45 degrees. So these notches up here ensure that the eggs actually don't fall off. So you have to make sure that, of course, whenever you're using the setter trays, it's been cleaned, it's been disinfected, and most importantly, that these notches are still well in place, because if you use one that the notches are already broken, of course the eggs are going to fall off. So the first step, of course, before you even start selecting is that you must make sure that your hands are clean. So I've already washed my hands, but apart from that, as you can see here, I have these latex gloves which I'm going to put on. So of course, whenever we're working in the hatchery, we like to have gloves on, of course, for hygiene reasons and also for biosafety reasons. So the first thing that I do is put on my gloves. And once I've put on my gloves, guys, the next step is take a disinfectant. You can choose whatever kind of mild disinfectant that you have, and then you spray your hands, okay, over the gloves. It's very important to do that. And every now and then you'll notice that every time, once we do, a couple of trays, we like disinfecting the hands. And the idea for that is for you to make sure that you don't transfer bacteria and germs from one egg set to another egg set, purely because your hands have collected the germs from one tray. So biosafety is extremely important for you to keep disinfecting your hands as you go on with the process. Now, as you can see, my hands are a bit wet right now, and it's very important for you to understand that you never touch fertilized eggs or eggs for incubation with wet hands. So having said that, you should also be aware that you should never ever wash your fertilized egg, even the ones which are dirty. I'll show you shortly what we do with them, because fertilized eggs should never ever touch water, because that actually just messes them up and removes the protective coating over it. So we'll have to wait for our hands to dry before now we proceed to the next step. So guys, as you can see, my hands are now dry, and now I can begin the process of actually selecting the eggs. Now I'm going to take you what type of eggs are actually good. Now the good eggs are the ones that I'm going to load onto these setter trays, and the defective eggs are the ones which I'm going to put aside on an extra tray, on an empty tray here. And I'll be explaining step by step, how we select these eggs and which eggs which are actually going to be defective, which actually I'm going to set aside. So we start off now. There are key things that you need to remember whenever you're selecting your eggs. That weight is something that is very critical. You must ensure that the eggs are of the correct weight, and the weight that you actually use is eggs which are at least 46 grams of weight, 46 grams weight. Now the second thing, of course, is clean. Fertilized eggs must be clean before they are loaded into the machine. Otherwise, you just take into the machine bacteria and germs, which of course eventually the chicks that hatch pick up the bacteria from that place, and of course those chicks die pretty young. And number three, of course, is the egg size. Okay, now there are some eggs which are extremely big. Now if an egg is too big, obviously you are not going to use it, because that egg often will actually not hatch. Now the other aspect, of course, we have to remove the cracked eggs. Cracked eggs are eggs which actually have either very small lines, hairline cracks we call them, or eggs which actually literally you can see the crack and even the content is actually pouring out there. That's cracked eggs. Of course, we don't use such eggs. The other type of eggs that we use are eggs that we call the elongated eggs. I will show you what type of eggs are actually classified as elongated eggs. And of course, the eggs that we also don't use are the very small eggs, eggs which are below the 46 grams weight. Of course, those ones will toss aside. So guys, we're going to go through these eggs, and I'm going to demonstrate to you and show you each one of those type of eggs. Okay. So we must have our weighing scale here. Okay. We have a tray here that we can switch on. Okay. And of course, once you remove the weight of the tray, we can take the weight back to 0, and we can be able to check. For instance, I've just seen some of the eggs that look a bit small, and I will start off with those ones. Now, if you look at an egg like this and you load it there, it tells you it's 46 grams. That's good to go. But how about this one? This one is actually 42 grams. So this egg, being underweight, is actually going to be selected out and is not going to be used. So for me, when I'm actually starting up on whatever tray, I like first identifying the small eggs and confirm whether their weight is actually good. Like this one again, too low, 44 grams. 48 grams is actually good. And this other one is actually 46 grams, which is good. Now, once you look at the tray and you realize that those are the smallest eggs that you've chosen out, of course, obviously, the rest of the eggs can't be smaller than that, as you can see. 48 is good. And this one is 48, so that's good. So, of course, I can automatically assume that all these other eggs which are on this tray actually have the right weights. So, once the weight aspect has been selected off, the next step that we go to is on the aspect to do with the cleanliness. So, obviously, these two eggs are a bit dirty. So these eggs are actually not going to be used at all. Now, I did mention that eggs should actually never touch water. And having said that, you should never ever wash dirty eggs. Because once you wash dirty eggs, you mess them up. And again, you keep spreading all the bacteria all over the place, and you remove the protective cover that is actually the unclear, invisible protective cover that is actually over the shell that enables the conditions actually to be maintained inside. So we never wash dirty eggs, we just automatically remove them. So all these eggs that you're seeing which are a bit dirty, those ones are automatically going to be removed from the good eggs to use. So apart from that, of course, I'll look at the rest and look at an egg like this. This egg look actually quite big, and of course, even for eggs which are overweight, we have a maximum weight which, let's see, this one surpasses it. The maximum weight for eggs that we use for incubation is actually 68 grams. So such an egg does not qualify and will be selected off and tossed away. And once I have a look at all these other eggs, they look pretty clean, standard, and neat. The next step, of course, is for me to look out for cracked eggs. So I have to go through an egg one by one. Now, this type of egg that you see here, now if you look keenly, you notice that this egg has sort of a bump here. This type of eggs, as much as everything looks perfect, is actually the type of eggs that we call the misshaped eggs. And these misshaped eggs, of course, are not ideal for incubation because they will actually not hatch, so we toss them aside. Now, the other thing that you should notice is that every time I'm putting the eggs onto the setter tray, the sharp side is always facing down. So there you go. So all eggs, the sharp side should be facing down. And when I'm going through this process, remember all the type of eggs which I've mentioned are just randomly going through my head to make sure that the eggs which I'm selecting actually are able to meet those minimum standards. So for the rest of these eggs, actually pretty okay. And those ones can be used for incubation and hatching. Now, before I even move further, I want to demonstrate the other type of eggs, especially the elongated eggs, the cracked eggs, the misshaped eggs, all the eggs which are usually selected out. I want to show you. So guys, as you can see, I've brought a tray here of eggs which have already been previously selected out, and I want to show you just by going through the eggs why some of these eggs are actually not ideal at all for incubation and hatching, or why they've actually been removed from being used for incubation and hatching. So let's start off with this egg. What do you notice about this egg? You notice that it has something like a blood stain. Now these are blood stained eggs. Of course, they usually produce, whenever a hen has an injury through its egg production system. So of course, whenever you find these blood streak, often these eggs, even if they are the correct weight and everything is perfect, they usually don't hatch. So we toss them aside. Now this type of egg, again, if you notice, you see that it's a bit misshaped. It has something like sort of a bump, okay, all around it. And this type of a bump that you see is actually why we call the egg a misshaped egg. Those eggs often also do not hatch. So I'll remove these blood stained eggs. You can see some of them, the blood is actually quite a lot. So these eggs, we don't incubate them at all. The same thing goes for this one. It's a blood stained egg. Now look at this type of egg. Now this type of egg, as you can see on the surface, it looks a bit like someone has sprinkled some salt on it. Has this rough kind of shell. Now these eggs, obviously what tells you is that the calcium formation did not form correctly, or there was over deposit or under deposit of calcium on the shell, and such an egg often does not hatch at all. So what we usually do, of course, we usually toss it aside as an egg that is not viable. This type of egg again, now if you look keenly at this egg, it does not have the usual standard shape of an egg, where you find the shape of an egg has a broad side on the top and the narrow side on the lower side. So this type of an egg that looks like it has two sharp sides, we usually call it the elongated type of egg. Now you often find that elongated eggs also may still be misshaped. So if you look keenly, the egg surface actually has some bumps on it. So this kind of eggs, again, we toss them aside, we don't use them. Now there's also this type of egg here, which you find has sort of an uneven shaped shell color. Now of course the rest of the egg looks perfect, but down here, if you look keenly, you notice that it has sort of an uneven color. Now such an even shell color is a poor quality eggshell. So of course such eggs, again, we don't incubate them. Again, I've already mentioned the elongated eggs, which, as you can see there, we don't incubate. And of course the dirty eggs. Now like I said, you do have a clean dirty eggs. So even if the dirt is minimal to you, it may look minimal, any small amount of dirt would actually introduce, any small amount of dirt will actually introduce bacteria into the setters. And of course the chicks which will be produced will have bacteria, so we don't incubate those ones. And yeah, of course the really big eggs, the oversized eggs. So an egg like this one looks perfect, but then again, if you look keenly, you notice that it has the misshaped egg. Now some of these eggs just have very tiny cracks that we call the hairline cracks. And if you look keenly on this egg, I don't know whether you'll be able to see, but if you look keenly on the surface, it has a very, very tiny crack. The content may actually not be pouring out, but of course, obviously, from the fact that it is cracked, what will happen is that once it's actually in the setter, it will actually explode, and it will, yes, right there. So you can see that crack around there. And the problem with this crack, of course, obviously, is going to make the content, once the machine heats up, it's going to make the content expand inside, and the egg is actually going to explode. So for that reason, we don't incubate it. So guys, those are the type of eggs that we actually don't incubate, or rather we select out whenever we want to produce chicks. So remember that the eggs that we actually use to produce chicks are what we call the fertilized eggs, and for eggs to be fertilized, they must actually come from hens which have been mixed together with cockerels. And of course, guys, issues to do with the incubation and hatching. Here are the setters, where all these eggs, once they are loaded into the machines, and these machines are the setters and the hatchers, and this is what we use to actually convert these eggs into chicks within about 21 days. So guys, please watch the other videos. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel, and also guys, don't forget that every single month we do training. So SMS our training to 0727 200 116 for you to get details of our upcoming training. Don't also forget to check out our other YouTube videos that address various issues. And during our training days, don't forget guys, that we cover every single thing to do with the rearing of the Kienyeji chicken, including how these machines are set, how you actually move the eggs, how do you keep them clean, what exactly is the process of actually using these setters and hatchers, and basically guys, how to actually be able to convert these eggs into chicks that you can actually be able to rear and get big chicken that you can be able to sell, or simply do the business of incubation and hatching chicks. So I hope guys you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please click on the like button below. Don't forget to subscribe, and keep watching guys.